I spent 6 years collecting evidence while she laughed in hotel rooms. She built a second life. So I built a trap. She'd never escape. Then I locked it. I reserved our table at Maison Marceau 2 weeks in advance. The same French restaurant in downtown Chicago, where I'd proposed to her 23 years ago. I specified everything. Candlelight white lilies live jazz exactly as it had been on our 10th anniversary. Some memories deserve perfect recreation, even when you're preparing for their funeral. The maitre d' recognized me immediately. "Mr. Reeve, your usual table is ready." He led me through the dimly lit dining room, past couples leaning into each other's whispers. Our corner table waited draped in crisp white linen, the candlelight dancing across the crystal glasses. "Just one moment," I said, inspecting the setup. "The creme brulee, it's still on the menu." The only dessert Sabrina had ever called perfect in our marriage. "Of course, sir. Shall I have it prepared in advance?" I nodded. "For two." As I sat waiting, I rehearsed my lines silently. Just one night to bring her back to me. But that was only half true. I'd prepared for both possibilities. Resurrection or burial. The velvet box in my right pocket held a restored wedding band. The envelope in my left held papers from my lawyer. Sabrina arrived 12 minutes late. No apology. She wore a black dress that skimmed her figure hair pulled into a severe updo, her makeup colder, more calculated than I remembered, and that perfume jasmine with woody notes unfamiliar. Not her usual scent. She sat down like she was attending a board meeting. Eyes never meeting mine. Posture rigid. No glance at the menu, just 5 words. "I don't have much time." The waiter poured the wine, Chateau Margaux 1996, the one I'd spent weeks tracking down because she'd once mentioned it in passing. She inhaled lightly before speaking 2 precise words: "Pleasure plans." I stared, uncomprehending. "This us," she clarified, finally looking at me. "I want to end it because I have plans for pleasure." No anger in her voice, no regret, not even the courtesy of a goodbye look. She took one final sip of the wine, placed the glass down with surgical precision, then stood. Her napkin still bearing her lipstick mark, folded neatly, placed slightly left of center like a deliberate signal. As she walked away, her heels clicked against the marble floor in steady rhythm, a death march in designer shoes. She never looked back. That's when I noticed him sitting at the bar, young, trim, in a tailored navy blazer, Connor Pierce. His furtive glances followed her out. The moment she disappeared, he drained his glass, dropped a $10 bill on the counter, and slipped out after her. His footsteps hitting the stone floor with the same cadence as hers, a well-rehearsed duet. I remained seated, the creme brulee untouched before me, its caramel surface cracked, just so I lifted my spoon, then set it down. I couldn't swallow. Not from heartbreak, but from sudden clarity. I reached for her napkin, unfolded it, there in hasty handwriting. 23 years enough. I tucked it into my inner vest pocket, folding it precisely along its creases like a contract already signed. When I stood to leave, I paid in cash, double tip. The server looked at me with that mixture of pity and fear people reserve for the wounded. But I didn't need pity. I didn't leave the restaurant as an abandoned husband. I walked out like an architect who had just approved the final design for a courthouse of consequences. In the car, I didn't turn on the radio. Didn't call anyone. I simply opened the compartment beneath my seat, where a USB drive had been waiting for 6 years, labeled, "If She Betrays." For the first time since hiding it there, I plugged it into my laptop. My fingers moved with practiced precision as I navigated through the laptop's directory structure. The USB drive's contents appeared on screen, a folder labeled Contingency, Sabrina, carefully buried beneath layers of mundane files, disguised inside a folder called 2021 Tax Forecast. No one browsing my computer would think to look there. Not even her inside were 36 subfolders, each meticulously dated and organized chronologically from 2017, the year the first thread of suspicion wove into my consciousness. The first document was titled simply Phase 1, Observation. I clicked through the folders methodically, like a curator reviewing his life's work. This was, after all, a museum of betrayal with exhibits spanning nearly 6 years. The earliest files contained the data pulls from her devices. When I upgraded Sabrina's iPhone that Christmas, she never bothered to change her iCloud sharing permissions. Why would she? The woman assumed I was technologically inept, just another middle-aged man bewildered by the digital world. Her fatal error. The message logs revealed nicknames she'd never used with me. Mitch the Closer, Baby Tiger, and the particularly nauseating captain of my ship. The timestamps matched evenings when she'd texted me about working late at the office. Her location data told a different story. Hotel Wi-Fi networks, rooftop bars, secluded restaurants. I scrolled to the tracking application subfolder I'd installed it during a casual moment. "Let me fix that Bluetooth issue for you, honey," while secretly embedding location tracking software that ran silently in the background. Each time she connected to public Wi-Fi, the data pinged to my anonymous email account. 27 different hotels, 4 hotel chains, 3 locations within a 5-mile radius of her law office. The external evidence came from Ben Travers, my college roommate turned prosecutor turned private investigator. His folder contained 79 photographs, 6 short videos, and 3 long-distance surveillance clips. There she was, with Connor Pierce on a rooftop bar stepping into his SUV and, most damning her, adjusting his collar in a hotel elevator with a level of intimacy that crushed any possible innocent explanation. But the audio recordings were the spine-snapping evidence. A small device attached under the passenger seat of her car had captured everything. "He thinks I'm at a women's leadership seminar." Her voice casual, amused. "That house is too beautiful to waste on someone like him." Clinical, detached. "You don't need to be jealous, he's as old and sluggish as a house cat." Followed by laughter, his and hers harmonizing in my humiliation. I didn't rage. I organized. I backed everything up in triplicate encrypted USB secure cloud storage and an offline hard drive in a safety deposit box at First Chicago Trust. I created a section titled Voicemail Baiting, in anticipation of desperate calls that might come later. I built presentation slides labeled What the Judge Will Need to See, organizing the evidence by date, severity, and legal significance. Looking through this digital morgue, I finally saw Sabrina clearly not as a woman who had strayed through emotional weakness, but as a calculating manipulator who wielded emotions like tactical weapons. Connor wasn't her first. He was just the latest model, younger than me, easier to control, disposable when needed. The pattern was undeniable. She'd stay just long enough to secure something status property connections, then move on once the asset was acquired or its utility exhausted. I was just another transaction that had outlived its usefulness. I opened my webcam application and stared at my reflection on screen. The face looking back wasn't broken or desperate. It was focused, determined. I addressed the camera as if presenting to a board of directors, "Welcome to Phase 2, the part you will never control." I hit enter and opened the folder labeled Assets and Court, Deployment. In the dim light of my car, the screen illuminated my face with a cold blue glow as my plans began their irreversible execution. I didn't return to what was once called home. Instead, I drove directly to the Kensington Heights Hotel, where I'd reserved a premium suite on the 17th floor 2 weeks prior. The same day, I booked the restaurant. Preparation is everything. The suite was exactly as requested. Corner position, unobstructed view of the city skyline, and most importantly, a secure connection to my home's security system. 6 monitors lined the desk by the panoramic window, each displaying different camera angles, including the 6 blind spot cameras I'd installed myself, motion sensors at every entry point, and the smart lock system whose firmware I'd quietly modified 4 months ago during a routine upgrade. I activated the front gate. Camera poured myself 3 fingers of Macallan Rare Cask and set my laptop to screen record mode. Then I waited. At 3:15 a.m., right on cue, Connor Pierce appeared at my front gate. He stumbled forward, swaying slightly. The navy blazer, the same one from the restaurant, was now rumpled. His dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, hair matted with sweat. The perfect picture of post-coital confidence. He punched in a code on the gate keypad. Red light. He tried again. Another failure. A third attempt still denied. I watched him stare at the glowing red "Access Denied" message with growing confusion. His expression morphed from bewilderment to irritation. He looked directly up at the camera hands on his hips like a customer who'd been served the wrong entree. He pulled out his phone, texting Sabrina. No doubt, then frowned at the screen. No response. He tried the keypad again, this time, pounding the numbers with more force. The light flashed red twice. The security system's signal for temporary lockout. I said nothing, didn't even smile. I simply clicked record clip and labeled it attempted entry. Connor 3:15 a.m. In the notes field, I typed lover attempting unauthorized entry, no documentation, no invitation, no access rights. I sat in silence, watching the high-definition display capture every pixel of his frustration. The security lights cast him in harsh relief, transforming him into a rat searching for entry through a sealed crack. At 3:47 a.m., Sabrina arrived. She appeared in the same black evening dress from dinner, but now her high heels dangled from her hand as she walked unsteadily on bare feet, weary from both dancing and drinking. Her lipstick was smudged hair disheveled, and a dark stain wine or spilled perfume marked the back of her dress. She rummaged through her purse, producing her house key with triumphant certainty, but when she inserted it into the electronic lock, the system flashed red, user revoked. She tried again with the same result, and again her movements becoming more desperate with each attempt. After the fourth try, she pressed the intercom button. I watched her face in perfect clarity as she waited. 3 seconds of silence passed before the system activated. A female computerized voice responded. This property is no longer accessible to you. Please check your email for further details. She staggered backward as if physically struck. For 10 seconds she stood frozen, processing what she'd heard. Then she pulled out her phone and opened her email. I could see her screen through the camera. A new message had arrived. Legal notice, effective immediately, from Stephen Clark, attorney at law. The email contained exactly what I'd instructed my lawyer to send: an emergency divorce petition, filed with Cook County Court at 6:03 a.m. the previous morning. A temporary freeze on all joint assets, house vehicles, accounts, stocks with a judge's verification stamp. An attached video of Connor Pierce at the gate, time-stamped, dated with GPS coordinates matching security data, and an audio recording of her voice in the car saying, "He doesn't suspect a thing." It's like I'm living two parallel lives. I watched her reaction with clinical detachment. First, her hands trembled. Then she gripped the phone so tightly her knuckles whitened. Finally, she pounded on the door as if hitting it hard enough might somehow reverse time. "Daniel," she screamed my name. "Open the door. What the hell are you doing?" The voice recognition system registered her speech patterns but remained programmed not to respond. The system maintained absolute silence. From my hotel room, I observed her like a playwright watching a perfectly directed final act. The lighting, the timing, the inevitable crescendo of realization. It was all proceeding exactly as designed. She tried calling my cell phone. The automated message informed her that the number was no longer in service. She attempted to use her emergency key for the side entrance. I'd changed that lock 3 days ago. She even tried to climb over the garden wall, only to trigger the motion sensors that intensified the security lights, bathing her in exposing brightness. For 23 minutes, I watched her cycle through denial, anger, bargaining, and finally the dawning comprehension that the fortress she'd taken for granted was now impenetrable. I recorded the final segment, labeling it Primary Target, Denial and Panic. Then I opened my email and typed a subject line, "To HR, Phase 2. I attached the videos of both Connor's attempted entry and Sabrina's locked-out fury, added a brief note referencing time-stamped location data that proved neither had spent the night where they claimed to be, and pressed send. The email would arrive in the Human Resources inbox at Whitmore Carter LLP, Sabrina's law firm, precisely at 7:30 a.m., 30 minutes before their office opened. The timing wasn't accidental. Nothing in my plan was. At 8:00 a.m. sharp, I switched from the home security feed to the traffic camera across from Whitmore Carter LLP. Through my lawyer's connections, I'd gained temporary access to the building's lobby security feed as well, all perfectly legal with the right paperwork and justification. Sabrina arrived at the prestigious law firm, still wearing last night's black dress, hastily covered with a thin cardigan. The smudged mascara beneath her eyes told the story of a sleepless night. She'd spent it making frantic calls to hotels, Friends, even locksmiths, all blocked or redirected through my carefully constructed digital maze. Whitmore Carter LLP occupied the 28th floor of the glass tower on Michigan Avenue, a temple of power where Sabrina had built her reputation. The transparent walls and open concept design that she'd once proudly called a fishbowl of success now worked against her as every eye tracked her disheveled entrance. The receptionist's smile froze. A paralegal stopped mid-conversation. Even the cleaning staff paused, mop suspended in air to watch her uncharacteristically rumpled passage through the lobby. Two young associates exchanged glances before hunching over their phones. The rumors would begin spreading, now multiplying through text chains and hushed conversations by the coffee machine. At precisely 8:10 a.m., a black-suited courier arrived at the reception desk with a sealed package. The envelope was jet black, embossed with the silver logo of Clark & Denson LLP, the firm where I'd retained Stephen Clark nearly a year ago. The package was directed to Miranda Jeffries, head of human resources, with explicit instructions that it be opened immediately upon receipt. Inside was a dossier I'd personally compiled, printed screenshots of intimate messages between Sabrina Lowell and Connor Pierce, establishing a relationship spanning more than 10 months. Hotel receipts falsely claimed as client entertainment expenses for romantic suites that could never qualify as legitimate business accommodations. A highlighted transcript of Sabrina's own words, "He's pathetically oblivious that house should be ours by now." The crown jewel, a photograph of Sabrina adjusting Connor's collar taken at last year's Women in Leadership Conference, where she was supposedly representing the firm while receiving an award for professional ethics. At 11:58 a.m., Sabrina was summoned to conference room. B2 senior partners waited with the HR director, their faces as impassive as tempered glass. She tried to maintain composure, but the rhythm was off. Her blouse remained wrinkled despite obvious attempts to smooth it. She'd applied hairspray to tame her typically perfect coif, but a single strand had escaped, falling across her face like a crack in a pristine facade. "Who sent this?" she demanded before they could speak. They didn't answer. Instead, they placed the black envelope on the table and methodically removed each document, arranging them in the precise order I'd suggested to Stephen. When we planned this moment, the suspension order was issued on the spot. Indefinite leave, pending internal investigation. Immediate surrender of all company property, laptop, phone, access card. I'm irreplaceable here. Sabrina protested, her voice carrying none of the authority it had commanded yesterday. The senior partner, Gregory Whitmore himself, replied without emotion, "No one is irreplaceable." I watched through my hotel's secure connection as 23 years of calculated career building collapsed in 23 minutes. She attempted to call a friend on the executive committee. No answer. She tried her longtime assistant voicemail. She even approached her mentor, who turned and walked in the opposite direction. As she exited the conference room, not a single person made eye contact. No greetings. No acknowledgments, as if she'd already become a ghost, haunting the hallways in broad daylight. In the lobby, she spotted a courier in a navy blazer leaving the building, a man I'd hired, wearing the exact jacket she'd bought me for our 18th Christmas together. The detail was unnecessary, but satisfying, a flourish in my composition that only she would understand. She pulled out her phone and found 37 missed calls from my number, all simulated through a redirect system I'd programmed to make her believe I was desperately trying to reach her. When she hit "call back," the automated response was immediate. "This number is no longer in service." She stood in the lobby, disoriented and unmoored. Meanwhile, from my hotel suite 17 floors above the city, I was already preparing for the next phase. The courtroom. I opened my laptop and accessed the final folder, the one containing documents proving that 6 years ago, when Sabrina needed $42,000 for what she called investing in a yoga studio with friends, I had agreed on one condition: she sign papers, transferring our house into the Reeve family trust. The money had never gone to any yoga studio. It had funded her first extended affair with a junior associate who'd since moved to California. When she failed to repay after 2 years as agreed, the contract automatically triggered full ownership of the house, legally transferred to my sole possession. She never knew, because I'd arranged for all notifications from the notary office to be sent to a separate mailbox. Just for junk mail, as I jokingly told her. As I reviewed the court filings, I received a text from Stephen Clark. Package delivered to HR meeting. Concluded subject exited building at 12:37 p.m. Phase 2 complete. I texted back a single word, proceed. The judge would see our case tomorrow morning. By sunset, Sabrina Lowell would understand that it wasn't just her husband she had lost, but her entire carefully constructed identity. 3 days after being locked out of her life, Sabrina Lowell hired her own attorney, a suburban divorce specialist named Eric Bladen. He was young, slick, with gel-styled hair and a light-colored suit that looked more appropriate for a country club than a courtroom. His website boasted of aggressive representation for high-net-worth divorces, with testimonials from satisfied clients who'd kept everything. I watched them enter the courthouse together that morning, Sabrina in her most conservative navy suit, Bladen carrying a leather briefcase that still had the shine of recent purchase. Their confidence was palpable and misplaced. "This will be easy to reverse," I overheard Bladen telling her as they passed through security. "There's no official ruling yet, just temporary injunctions we can challenge." They had filed an emergency petition with the Cook County Court, demanding immediate restoration of Sabrina's access to our home and a stay on all asset freezing orders. The filing was full of indignant language about unreasonable actions and disproportionate responses to marital disagreements. What they didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment for 347 days. Stephen Clark. My attorney was a former military lawyer who despised flowery language and courtroom theatrics. His suits were always charcoal gray, his tie always navy blue, his arguments always precise as surgical incisions. We'd been working together for nearly a year, methodically building a case that could withstand any counterattack. "We don't just want to win," Stephen had said during our first meeting. "We want to create a situation where fighting back only makes it worse for her." For the morning's Zoom hearing, Stephen had prepared 3 color-coded presentation folders: red infidelity, yellow financial misconduct, and black family responsibility failures. Each contained irrefutable evidence, time-stamped, verified, and presented with the cold precision of a military operation. Judge Margot Fennell presided over the hearing, a reputation for being tough, concise, and merciless to unprepared attorneys. She appeared on screen precisely at 9:00 a.m., not a second earlier or later. "I have reviewed the emergency petition," she began without preamble. "Let's proceed with the respondent's evidence." Stephen Clark methodically presented each exhibit as if laying down cards in a perfect hand. Exhibit A compilation of surveillance photos showing Sabrina entering various hotels, time-stamped lobby camera footage, and GPS location data that matched perfectly with business meetings on her work calendar. Exhibit B, the iCloud extraction report containing messages between Sabrina and Connor Pierce, including photos in positions that, as Stephen clinically stated, cannot be reconciled with any professional relationship. Exhibit C, financial records, showing Sabrina used her company card to pay for Marriott Monday hotel rooms, falsely categorized as mental health therapy sessions. In expense reports, a direct violation of both company policy and ethical standards for attorneys. Exhibit D, a sworn statement from my niece Madison, who had lived with us for 3 years after her parents' divorce. The teenager's testimony was devastating in its simplicity. She only looked at me when I interrupted her calls. No one felt like family there. I watched Sabrina's face on the Zoom screen grow increasingly pale as each piece of evidence appeared. Bladen kept trying to object, but Judge Fennell shut him down repeatedly with variations of, "Save it for your response." The coup de grace came when Stephen presented a life-sized print of the napkin with Sabrina's handwriting, 23 years enough. He had it mounted on a tripod stand visible in his camera frame. Next came the audio recording of Sabrina's voice. "He doesn't know anything, that house is practically mine already." On screen, Sabrina's expression shifted from shock to panic. She tried to interrupt, but Judge Fennell muted her microphone with a sharp warning about court decorum. When Stephen finished presenting, Bladen scrambled to respond. He attempted to portray me as controlling, emotionally unstable, overreacting to a simple marital spat. But his arguments fell apart when confronted with the methodical evidence trail I'd assembled. "Your Honor," he finally pleaded, "Ms. Lowell needs access to her home to retrieve personal items and necessary documents." Judge Fennell didn't need more than 2 minutes after the submissions were complete. Her ruling was swift and unequivocal. The request for restoration of property access is denied. The respondent shall continue to be barred from accessing the resident's account's assets, or the petitioner, until divorce proceedings are completed. The court finds no indication that the petitioner's actions were impulsive, emotional, or unreasonable, given the extensively documented circumstances. With clinical efficiency, she added, furthermore, all evidence presented today will be admissible in the final divorce proceedings. This court strongly advises the respondent to consult with her counsel about realistic settlement options rather than prolonged litigation. The screen went black as Judge Fennell ended the Zoom session. On another monitor, I could see Sabrina and Bladen in the courthouse corridor, her composure finally breaking as she gripped his arm and demanded answers he couldn't provide. I closed my laptop, reached into my desk drawer, and removed a sheet of paper I'd prepared weeks ago. On it, I'd handwritten, "I could have forgiven betrayal, but I will never forgive the stupidity of believing I wouldn't know." I folded it, precisely slipped it into a black envelope labeled Final Draft, Sabrina, and sealed it with the same wax stamp I'd used on our wedding invitations 23 years earlier. The courier would deliver it tomorrow morning. Not because it was necessary for my plan that was already proceeding perfectly, but because some endings deserve their proper punctuation. As I handed the envelope to my assistant for delivery, I felt neither joy nor sorrow, just the quiet satisfaction of a chess player who had anticipated every move on the board and was now watching the inevitable checkmate unfold exactly as planned. 10 days after our restaurant meeting, I received a report from my surveillance team that Sabrina had been relocated to a different room in her temporary apartment building. The manager had requested she move following complaints about telephone harassment in the middle of the night. Apparently, she'd been making frantic calls at 3 a.m., her voice escalating from hushed desperation to uncontrolled shouting. Her corporate credit cards had been suspended, her company-linked accounts frozen. Her email automatically replied with a terse, "Out of office. Contact managing partner for urgent matters." According to my sources, she had called Connor Pierce 17 times. No answer. Sent 23 text messages, no response. His Instagram, where they'd once exchanged coded messages through innocuous comments on travel photos, now showed she was blocked. It was time for the final act. I sent a courier dressed in the navy blazer Sabrina had given me for our 18th Christmas together to deliver a black envelope to her temporary residence. The security footage showed her signing for it with trembling hands. She didn't even wait for the elevator doors to close before tearing it open. Inside was a USB drive labeled Final Draft, Monroe Dissolution. The name was deliberate. Monroe was what she'd called herself in private moments of ambition, believing it carried the gravity her career deserved. The drive contained everything: documents, photographs, chat extracts, voice recordings, night vision camera footage. A special folder marked "For Court, Redacted" held a sanitized version of the evidence ready to deploy if she attempted to fight back, pruned just enough to be presentable in any courtroom while still destroying her reputation. Accompanying the USB was a 5-page summary of our divorce settlement. No alimony due to documented marital misconduct. No property rights, as everything had been legally titled separately between 2 and 6 years prior, authorized by contracts she'd signed when requesting investment money for her personal projects. No guardianship rights to my niece, supported by a therapist's statement detailing emotional neglect. A clear warning any appeal or counteraccusation would result in the complete dossier being released to media outlets. The emotional anchor came last: a plastic laminated photograph of the dinner napkin with her handwriting. 23 years enough. Beside it, a handwritten note from me in black ink. "You left the table too early. I stayed and took everything." My surveillance team captured what happened next. She dropped the folder in the middle of her former firm's lobby, where she'd gone to plead with former colleagues. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the marble floor that had once echoed with the confident click of her heels. People passing by stopped, not to laugh, not to help. They simply observed silently, like witnesses to the toppling of a monument that had once seemed permanent. 6 years earlier, Sabrina had approached me for $42,000 to invest in a yoga studio with friends. I'd agreed on one condition: she sign papers transferring our house into the Reeve Family Trust, a standard asset protection measure. I'd explained, the money never went to any yoga studio. It funded a weekend retreat with the first Connor, a different name, same type. When she failed to repay after 2 years, as our contract stipulated, the automated clause, triggered complete transfer of her house equity. She never knew because I'd arranged for all notifications from the notary office to be sent to a separate mailbox, just for junk mail. As I'd jokingly told her I sold the house last week to Evelyn Weaver, wife of Henry Weaver, senior partner at Whitmore Carter LLP, Sabrina's former workplace. They purchased it for just $2 under market value. Not because I needed the money, but because I needed the perfect closing bracket to this chapter. In a few weeks they would host a housewarming party in what Sabrina had once proudly called Queen Monroe's domain. Yesterday I received a final text message from her. "You were right, I lost everything for one night. Please talk to me. No capitalization, no emoji, no, my darling Daniel." Just a bare stripped sentence as if typed from the bottom of a pit. I didn't reply with words. I sent only an image, the napkin with her handwriting, now professionally framed in ebony wood soft light, reflecting off museum-grade glass with a gold-plated edge. 23 years enough. Then I blocked her number, deleted our contact history, and updated the trust documents, her name permanently removed. That night I sat in my new apartment looking out at the Chicago skyline, what she used to call the smell of power. I raised my glass not in celebration but to close a memoir no one had asked to read, which I had nonetheless written with the precision of a forensic pathologist. 23 years ago I'd asked Sabrina to marry me because I thought we were building something together. We were, but not what I imagined. While I constructed a life, she engineered an escape. While I invested trust, she deposited lies. The balance sheet was never going to reconcile. Our marriage didn't crack. It collapsed under the weight of her arrogance. My revenge required no knife, only silence and a clear mind. Sabrina Lowell didn't lose a husband. She lost the world she'd built with deception, and I simply reclaimed what I had once given away. As I watch the city lights from my window tonight, I feel neither victory nor loss, only the quiet certainty that architecture, whether of buildings or consequences, must follow the laws of gravity. What is built on a false foundation will inevitably fall. The napkin on my wall reminds me not of what I've lost, but of what I've learned. The final exhibit in a case that needed no jury and no judge. Just time and truth. The only two forces no one escapes.